Immolated Fries, and I'm joined by my wonderful Marvel Talk tag team partner, Andre Whatsy. Sorry for this episode being late. Neither one of us were available yesterday to go ahead and record this, so we are recording it today, and we'll be releasing it as soon as we are finished, as we go ahead and record the next episode right after this. So if you're seeing this, be prepared. What If Hela Found the 10 Rings will be coming out tomorrow morning. So definitely make sure to go ahead and check that one out. But we are here to talk about what if Kahhori reshaped the world.
Wow.
I want you to go ahead, Andre, and talk about this, as we were talking about it just a minute ago. Let's forget the episode as an episode of a television show. Let's forget that aspect for right now. Marvel did a big thing here, and they did a very big thing, in my mind, very well. They made sure to get the proper cultural collaborators. And in this episode with the Mohawk Nation, it was collaborators Doug George, who's a historian, and Cecilia King, who happens to be a language expert, to help them craft the world that this episode took place in. But not only just the world that this episode takes place in, but the language that the episode uses is a true Mohawk Native American language. Talk to me about the cultural, as two white guys. We're probably not the first person to talk about this.
Very, very white guy. I know, and I don't claim to have any ancestry, but I look at pictures of some of my people, some people way back, other stuff. But again, I'm a very white guy. I've lived a very white life. There's again, it was oddly beautiful in the way they did the art in this. For one, the art done in its own special way, but how they did pay respect to the Mohawk Nation in the fact that they did it was entirely in the Mohawk language in Spanish, outside of who's the guy that does the
Watcher?
Yeah, outside of his speaking on certain points, it was all spoken in Spanish or the Mohawk language, and it tough watch in a way for me personally, because I put subtitles, I have subtitles on almost everything I watch. That's more because I'm listening to stuff, but then sometimes somebody says something and I didn't quite get it, because I do have a bit of a hearing issue in my right ear, so I go back to kind of see what they said, because maybe I missed a word or what they were saying, or use it more for having English subtitles on, so that when people speak in other languages on episodes, I get what they say most of the time. But it's just having to really double down into it, because I'll admit I've never watched Squid Games, because I have, as much as I know a lot of people rave about it, I don't have the desire to do subtitles, and I'm a very not about subtitles where I've got to read the entire thing, because I focus right in on the subtitles and I miss things, even though I know it's on screen, but I don't. I have a weird focusing issue for me personally. So I don't know. I still enjoyed it. I think they did a great job with the episode, but it's towards it's above the first episode for me, because that first episode to me is just so boring. At least this one it was very original, it did some really cool things with the Tesseract, as we will talk about. Weirdly beautiful episode, but it took me out of it having to read the subtitles the entire time. I understand why they did it, to make it kind of seem very culturally appropriate, but for me personally, as a very white guy, there was a little bit of the Spanish I understood from phrases I've picked up over the years, but that was about it.
Yeah, I loved how beautiful everything in this episode was. We talk all the time about the animation style and how great it was. It was never more on display than it was in this episode. The beauty of this northern New York area that they portrayed this episode in, because the Mohawk Nation is a portion of Native Americans who lived in the upper portion of New York, close to the Canadian border. It is a beautiful place. It is fantastic.
Ooh, Canadian.
Yeah. No. On the American side, the right side.
Oh, boo.
Anyways, it was absolutely beautiful. However, like Andre says, I've watched every episode of Dragon Ball Z in the original Japanese. I've enjoyed it. I've thoroughly enjoyed it. I don't mind watching subtitles. I would have liked a warning ahead of time from Marvel telling us that this was a foreign film.
Oh, you didn't know that? Oh, it was widely out there for a couple weeks before this episode came out. I knew this days before going in.
Somehow I missed it. So when I first tuned into this episode, I found out that it was all in the Native American, the Mohawk language, and I was like, "Ooh, this is a bit," because I was trying to watch it while I was working, and unfortunately, with an episode like this, you need to devote your entire attention to it. You have to be able to watch the words and watch what's going on screen. This story is fantastic and fascinating and heartbreaking because it's a real, true to life. Unlike the comic books, this hits home because it's true to life and what happened in the United States when, and granted, it wasn't the United States at the time, but it happened in this country, in this area, when the natives were taken over by Spanish invaders, Spanish conquerors. And the things that happened when the Spanish and the Italians and the French wanted what they wanted. It's a fantastic episode in that respect. It's not my favorite episode. It won't be my favorite episode. But it is the most beautiful thing that Marvel's ever done in my life. It has now trumped Eternals in terms of just sheer quality of beautiful viewing. And the Eternals is a fantastically beautiful movie. It has issues, and we'll discuss that when we get to the MCU rebound about it. But Chloe Zhao brought a world that was the most stunning viewed version of a Marvel movie that we've ever seen. And this has topped that with this view of this area and the way they portrayed the Sky World and the way they portrayed everything that happened here. It was brilliant and fantastic.
Very much so. I again, part of it was maybe I wasn't super invested in the character either because, again, brand new character. I go into MCU looking to see the characters or versions of characters that I read for years. Again, it doesn't have to be the exact same version of a character I read in 1992, but I like reading about the characters I like. I'm familiar with. I like watching stuff about the characters. And I think that's part of why this underwhelmed me a bit until the ending.
And yeah, exactly. Bringing in a brand new character that's never been in the comics before and creating a character from scratch will annoy some Marvel fans because the what if is supposed to be a version of what if this thing happened in the comics that didn't happen in the comics. Well, if the character never existed in the comics, how can they be a what if? That being said, I thoroughly enjoyed that aspect of it. We're going to go bit by bit into the episode here. At first, we see Odin fighting against Surtur. And I believe this is the battle that we hear about in Thor Ragnarok, where Odin talks about having defeated Surtur. We hear Thor talking to Surtur. He's saying, "You son of a bitch! I thought you were dead." I think this is that battle that Thor references with Surtur when he's dangling from the chains.
But it happened in a different way.
And it did. It happened in a different way. Because in this battle, Surtur takes his sword and destroys the Tesseract. And in destroying the Tesseract, it flips the world Fortnite style, essentially, and gets disappeared off to a new world. More importantly, not just a new world, the new world, as we find out, because this takes place in the 1600s, which, by the way, I think will tie into an episode we'll see very shortly.
Yeah, like what we talked about on the Captain Carter episode. This ending made me go, oh, maybe not, because I have a feeling Captain Carter, that 1602 episode is going to lead right into the Strange Supreme episode.
Yes, it's absolutely going to do that. And the queen that they're talking about may very well be Queen Isabella that we saw in this episode.
and or possibly or they just do the because remember he's taking her to another realm, so I have a feeling it's not Queen Isabella, but I think it's what we were talking about. I can't remember her name now. The chick who,
Morgan Le Fay?
yes, I think it's LaFay messing with shit, and it's going to lead
It could be.
into Strange in the Strange episode. So
It very
back
well
to this. Back to this.
Yes. So it ends up in the new world, and we find Kahhori with her brother Whitey. And Kahhori is voiced by Deverly Jacobs. And I just want to say, chef's kiss.
Who is Canadian, by the way.
That's fantastic. She did a marvelous job.
She did.
With this voice. Because not only, so in a lot of places, it's like, oh, you have to learn a script. I don't know how much Mohawk she had to learn. She had to learn an entire language to be able to do her parts for this. Not one, but two. Because at the end of this episode, she will also speak Spanish when she talks directly to Queen Isabella. But they're running around, they're having some fun, and they're going towards the Forbidden Lake. And they see this little crappy pond type thing. They're like, this is the Forbidden Lake? And it's not. And when the Spanish start attacking the village, they run to help, and they fall through a hole in the ground that leads them to the real Forbidden Lake. And the real Forbidden Lake is icy blue with the color of the Tesseract.
Yep.
And it's beautiful. Fantastic little cave. Wonderful view. Absolutely sensational. She ends up falling into the water because of the fact that the Spanish come down and the Spanish are trying to get to the Fountain of Youth. Because, as everybody knows in this time, everybody's looking for the Fountain of Youth or El Dorado. One of the two. She ends up getting transported to a new world. And it's basically a version of what Native Americans would have called the Sky World. We have a fantastic picture of one of the people that she sees. Right here. Welcome to Sky World. He literally calls it Sky World.
Isn't that Wata? I want to say it's Wata.
No,
right?
This is Anacreus. This is the guy she meets on the other side.
Oh, Wata's her brother, right?
Wata is her brother, the little boy
who
gets kidnapped by the Spanish.
I don't know how to say that.
Atacris, I believe it is.
Yeah, Atacris.
We're gonna butcher a couple names here, and I sincerely apologize on that because we're not attempting to do it. But at the same time, when you're speaking in a language you've never heard before, it's hard to go ahead and give it a proper pronunciation. No, it's fantastic. She gets into this world where the Tesseract energy is imbued in everything, a la Black Panther. The Tesseract energy replaces the herb and the vibranium that resides in all plants and in all things. The animals and the fish, when you eat them, you're going to absorb some of the Tesseract energy. You can physically manifest this, the energy in other ways. They do a hunt scene where they're hunting these massive rhino-type things. Beasts.
Yeah. You have these crystals that you pull out of their back, and you can break them out and eat them.
Yeah. And it's just...
I was gonna say some people might be like, but it's like I think it's almost in this way of like a sheep, where you have to shear a sheep because their wool too much wool on them is bad for them. I think in this way, I would just pulling these off lets more grow for this animal. I'm going to assume.
Yeah,
because they're not hunting the animal itself.
No, they're not killing the animal. They're hunting the jewels that are on there.
Yeah, they're like a fruit. They
literally call it a fruit.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then she asks, why are we hunting fruit? And then it's explained in this. But she manifests this power beyond the levels that anybody else has in this world. Because during this hunt, she picks up one of the animals and flips it upside down. And literally when other ones are like, I got 2, I got 7. Like, oh, you got 7. And then she comes back and she has the entire like back of the animal, and she's like, "I win." But of course, all of this is a subculture to what happened on the other side, in the real world, where the natives are being enslaved and the village is being burned. And she's trying to get back because she knows her people are suffering. And these are her people too. These are people who, over the centuries, disappeared by going to the Forbidden Lake. And they're warriors and they're shaman and they're, spiritual advisors. And they've created this world for themselves on the other side.
Where they
And
don't
they're thriving.
age. When they don't age, there's not, like, it's just they exist as they are.
Yeah. And it's just beautiful. But she eventually has to go back and she has to face them.
Well, it's not even that. It's like the Spanish show up in that world because a bunch of them get sucked in.
Yes.
And
then
she stops their attack, puts them down, and says, "We need to go back." And this is probably one of the coolest parts of this is where she, like, because the portal's up in the sky, and she pulls the portal down to Earth. I thought that was awesome.
Yeah. This is the portal after she's pulled it down to the earth with all of the natives looking in as she comes in. I mean, it's fantastic. And it's a hell of an episode. And they run through the Spanish ships that are out on the water. Like the rest of them eventually come.
She gets attacked and knocked down. Like, she's battling them out, but she gets hit with a cannonball right in the forehead because it breaks through her shield. But then all the other people show up, and they're just speeding through the boats. And dude, it was and she, like, goes up and, like, kamehamehas a boat and blows it up. It was dope. Like, when I saw her in that, when you put up that photo, all I could think of is her going Super Saiyan Blue.
Yeah.
And it's she like she's firing energy blast out of her hands. I'm like, this is literally Dragon Ball Z. And this is where the episode really picked up for me, is in this back half of the episode, where I think it really hooked me, because this is where we get this superhero of it all.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah.
She goes ahead and she saves her brother, who she's looking for, and she finds him and she gives him back his necklace. And she tells him to watch what's going on, because he's going to need to write songs about this for the future. And he calls them the Thunder People, which is just fantastic. And again, a nod to Thor. We might talk about Thor in another episode very soon. Speaking of episodes that we're going to talk about very soon, we're not going to talk about this very soon. Did you notice that when she took down the Spanish captain, he had his hands sticking out of the ground and he was turned to stone? Yeah, because his hands just stuck there in the ground, out of the ground, and it's become the same color as the clay ground that was there. And I think it's supposed to mimic, in a little bit, it's an Easter egg for the eternal Tiamat, who's stuck in the middle of the Indian Ocean.
Oh.
Hands sticking out of the ground.
I never even connected that. Not even the slightest.
I just happened to see the hand sticking out of the ground, and where most people go horror movie, I went Eternals, which is kind of a horror movie. So.
I thought horror movie, not Eternals.
Yeah. But no, I thought it was great. I enjoyed, like you said, the back half of this. You then see this scene where they're talking about all the people who have gone to the New World and have died. And they go, maybe we just can't take over the New World. Maybe we've lost the New World. It's not ours. And Isabel's no.
Went back in the Spanish...
Yeah,
into Queen's chamber or whatever.
Yeah, the court. Queen's court in Spain. And she's like, no, we're going to go back. We're going to do this. We're going to conquer. My soldiers are supreme. We've lost nothing. And then Kahhori and her people just show up in the middle of this place. And she's not happy. Isabella is not thrilled.
Not even in the slightest. She looks pissed. And then she tries to attack. She tries to attack Carrie. Carrie just like, no. And then she, like, I love how she just, like, grabs the throne with her powers and just explodes it into, like, all these tiny little pieces. And, like, the queen just like, oh, shit. And she's saying, and then, like, Carrie is all in through the saying, we can live in peace and harmony. Just leave our people and our land alone, is what she's telling her. Which is insanely beautiful sentiment there.
until Doctor Strange walks in and goes, "World peace in record time."
Strange Supreme, baby. I thought he was stuck in a little ball.
Well, sort of, kind of. He's also now watching over Killmonger and what's his name? Zola. Don't forget that. He's got Zola and.
Or wait, no, he was.
Killmonger.
He didn't get stuck in there. Yeah, no, those two got stuck in there. Yeah.
No, Strange Supreme did. It was Strange Supreme from his own episode where he destroyed his own universe. He got stuck in that little bubble universe.
Yeah.
And then he got extracted from that by the Watcher to go ahead and take part in collecting everybody else.
But wasn't he put back into his bubble universe to watch over
Killmonger and
the Killmonger Zola battle? Yeah.
Yeah, and he's watching over that. So think about what must be so important that Doctor Strange Supreme is intervening in something else while he's supposed to be doing that.
Yeah.
But that's for another day. Andre, all right, now that we've talked about the cultural significance, we talked about how important this is as a cultural thing. As a superhero thing, this doesn't hit all the marks, does it?
Not until the last 5 minutes. Yes, I understand. We all understand. The superhero story is the person, we learn who the character is, then something befalls them, they learn to use their power in some way, and then they come out as a hero. It hit every point. It hit every point of what any superhero story will be. For me personally, and again, I part of this was watching it and again, having no real connection to it. Again, I'm not Native American. I'm not of any race that's ever had to struggle and deal with those racial, being oppressed. So again, I can appreciate what it's doing and what it's talking about. Don't get me wrong. I didn't have a connection to it until probably where they start the hunt. And you see her start to really use her powers. And that's when I finally fell in, and that's where I got oh, this is where it's getting good. And then when she went back to the real world, I guess, back to Earth, that's where those things picked up for me. Her going Super Saiyan Blue on everything. But it's just I had trouble connecting with this character.
Yeah, and I think this character will connect with so many people who aren't me and Andre, and that's a good thing. Not everything should be directed at the white guy.
No,
not every character should connect with the white guy. There is so much importance to connecting to people of different colors and people of different races and people of different backgrounds, ethnicities, all of these other things. And to connect to a much forgotten and not really talked about ethnicity in the Marvel comics with having Native Americans.
Because again,
it is incredible.
Think about Native Americans in Marvel. Can you think of any?
I can't think of any major ones, and like I said, I'm not the biggest comics guy. I know a lot more about the MCU than I do about comics in general. That being said, this is instead of taking a character which was already, say there was a character already created, they chose to create a character from scratch, as opposed to take and adapt any other character, which should tell you how important this task was to Marvel and how they absolutely did the best job in doing that by bringing in people to make sure that cultural elements were on point.
Mm-hmm.
And I will never discredit a company for bringing in people to keep cultural authenticity. Because we talk about it, I talk about it in my wrestling, how I prefer my storylines to have some element of cultural authenticity. I want, when I see a Latino on there, if they're going to portray Latino stereotypes, I want them to be authentic stereotypes. If they're going to portray African Americans on screen in a way that is going to speak to the African American community, I want it to be a positive type of cultural authenticity that they can relate to in a positive way to build on that. This story builds on, while being a negative event, it instills positive emotions into the Native American people, and specifically in this, the Mohawk Nation, the Mohawk tribe. And for that, I credit Marvel for doing a fantastic job. It's hard to tell an origin story in 30 minutes. And I think that's the biggest thing. If this were a 2-hour Marvel special, I think this would have been fantastic.
Yeah, or even an hour-long episode. I think this would have given time for it to breathe and time for it to really develop. You could have seen a bit longer training montage of their powers. You could have seen, like, maybe this. You could have seen the fight against the Spanish kind of more elaborated. Maybe her going to Spain wasn't the first time they poured it around to do things. Maybe she's had more fights with more Spanish contingents. That's where she's learned Spanish from, right? So,
but again, I think Marvel did a very good job with that. So we want to definitely go ahead and give them the credit for that. Andre, tell the good people where they can find you and what exciting things you have coming up in the next few days.
Twitter at that Canada guy, Instagram at that Canada dude. You can find me always on youtube.com/ at Andre and Melba Wrestling Talk, where you can find me and Mel doing Stardom review, NJPW Puro Wrestling review, and our local independent wrestling talk show, Chop Talk. This the 30th should be out on the 30th. I don't know if we're recording the night before or that morning. We're going to have a review of Stardom's year-end show, Dream Queendom. So check that out. I'm very much looking forward to that show. Suzu Suzuki versus Micah for the vacant World of Stardom Championship. I'm very excited to watch and then talk about that, because that show starts in 4 hours from when we're recording this. And then on January 1st, I will be having my interview with Melba's interview with Walker Stewart, the current English voice of New Japan, the newest English voice of New Japan. Will be joining us to talk New Japan. We're talking Wrestle Kingdom. We're talking New Japan overall. I'm going to talk about a little bit about his background in professional wrestling, how he got in. Guy's only, as far as I know, only about 21 years old, and he's already hit the big time. So I want to ask him his journey through professional wrestling. So we're going to talk all that stuff. We're going to do a little bit of a preview for Wrestle Kingdom. Lots of talk, good stuff there. And then on January 5th or 6th, we'll be having our Wrestle Kingdom review show coming out over there. So check that out. Yeah, lots of great content coming up. On OLE, we're going to be starting in the new year. We try to do weekly New Japan in Stardom recaps, just giving you little quick bits about some of the best matches of the week, stuff you need to check out, things like that from Stardom. And we're gonna have little short shows coming out on OLE every week for that too.
Yeah. And of course, you can find me at EdFries12584 on Twitter. You can find me on EdFries2002 on the Twitch machine. You can go ahead and see all of my content, my live content from our local establishment, simulcasted on my Twitch channel. You can also find me every Tuesday night with the wonderful Natural Asher Bizarro as we talk all things NXT. Hopefully, Asher will be back next week for NXT's New Year's Evil as we go ahead and recap that show. If you want to see me and this guy, we reviewed on Tuesday, we reviewed together the NXT show. Yeah. The New Japan guy came in to do an NXT show because New Japan Strong's own Carl Fredericks, Eddie Thorpe, was in the main event in NXT Underground. Mm-hmm. So you want to find out what Andre thought about that, go ahead and check out that episode on the YouTube channel at our local establishment. But for myself, for Andre, we'll see you next time. We'll talk to you later. Bye.